Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Loreweek. I'm your host, Lordude, who has been running around like a chicken with his head cut off all morning trying to get work done. I haven't even finished all the work I wanted to get done this morning. I still have to record. I finished the editing, I finished the writing, but I still have to sit down, record, and then process and edit and push out the latest Extant episode for the three of you who care about that. Or maybe it's two, I don't know. Surely some of you care. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's been a very busy week for me. I suppose we'll start with that. So for those of you who have already noticed this, yes, why is Rosebud up? For those of you who have noticed, yes, the Rebels playlist is already up. It's, in fact, I actually meant to look at this. I didn't even have time. Hang on, let me go pull up my own Hello Runner page really quick here. By which I mean my YouTube page. Let's see here. See if this will let me do it. Yep, here we go. What's with bell notifications? Shut up, you stupid thing. Yeah, that's what I thought. It's just put it towards the beginning of the created playlists. That's fine. That's good. It's good that people notice that. That makes me happy. Yeah, so for those of you who noticed, yes, we do have the Star Wars Rebels playlist is already done because the whole Mini Nation series is already done. I am still pretty out of it. I even took a day off in order to try and mentally recoup because of Geludo. If it wasn't for Geludo, I would have been able to keep working. But he insisted I take that day off. He's a taskmaster. Like, you wouldn't believe it. Thank you very, very much, Geludo. As ever and as always. And I have jotted that down towards Resident Evil 4. So yeah, I hope that it was a good GDQ. I didn't see most of it. I was busy. It was one of the rare examples of time when I could spend, time however I needed to. So I decided to get the Rebels Mini Nations done. They're done. I did it. All 4 seasons. It kind of wiped me a little bit. That's why I'm still a little bit. Woo. But they're done. That'll start going live, I believe, this coming Tuesday. And I know what you're thinking, Lore, why Tuesday instead of Monday? Because YouTube decided to change how their calendar works. I'm not even kidding. So I don't know how many of you have done any YouTube videos, but when you schedule a video, you could pull down a calendar and you could just select the date and click it. It used to be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Now it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which is not how it was when I last was doing this, which would have been around January. So it's going live on Tuesday, and by the time I noticed the mistake, it would have been such a colossal hassle to adjust every single video schedule date that I just said screw it. So they're going live Tuesday, and they'll be going live until late August, I want to say, will be when that series concludes. I've decided, based on a lot of your guys' feedback, we are going to be doing the 2 times a day, 5 times a week schedule, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I also decided to kind of put it on an axis. So 24 hours evenly divides into 3. So every 8 hours, a video is going to be going live, basically. There's the 5 a.m. stuff. That's the normal. That's going to be the Star Trek stuff and the Friday stuff. And then we're going to have at, I want to say 1 p.m. Yeah, that's right. 1 p.m. Another video is going to be going live. And 9 p.m. Another video is going to be going live. So that's when those are going to be things. I hope you guys like them. I have no idea if you're going to or not. It was a treat, a legitimate treat going through the show. Speaking of which, now that I've watched Star Wars Rebels, I'm going to give you my very brief opinion on Star Wars Rebels. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. I'm serious, by the way. I liked that show a lot. It did a lot right. It was very character-centric. It was very down-to-earth. It was very well directed. It was very well voice-acted. mostly well written. I gotta add that it was mostly well written, because every now and again things would just bother me about that show, and they never stopped. I somewhere in season one during an episode, I actually during the rumination I'm like, yeah, guys, I'm gonna stop bringing this up because it's just happening every episode and it's just bugging me every episode. So it's not a flawless show. Adams Camanalo. There we go. You got it, Adam. There we go. Words. I like, for example, too often the show would be a little bit too kids show. Now, for those of you who don't know, when I say the term kids show, I mean that as an insult. That is a negative statement. A kids show, as I am using the words, means they are making it deliberately stupid or pandering in a way that actively doesn't make sense to try and dumb it down for kids. Kind of like that. Yeah, it was a little jar-jarry at times, and it was a little slapsticky at times, and it was a little bit, why is this happening at times? To summarize, thank you very, very much, Seend. First of all, really quick, thank you so much, Seend. I'm sorry again. If it makes you feel any better, I was so delayed. That's why the stream was delayed, because I've got so much work to do. I haven't even gotten everything ready for today. But anyways, but yeah, the Imperials were so incompetently stupid throughout the whole thing. Yeah, the Stormtrooper effect was real. Not to spoil anything. Not to spoil anything for anybody who hasn't seen this show, but there is a scene in Rebels where a rebel is being held immobilized 10 feet away. And that might be too far. And they cannot manage to shoot him. Now, that's in addition to the fact that the Stormtroopers are just cartoonishly incompetent. Like, literally Looney Tunes levels of incompetence. I will admit occasionally that did make me laugh, but more of like a dissonance thing. It wasn't funny in context, it was funny out of context, if that makes any sense. Anyways, thank you very much, Wraith, as ever and as always. Appreciate this sub, thank you. Wraith and Seend, do you know what you want to put those towards? And don't put it towards Judgment, it's already happening. You don't have to do that. See, I've never accepted that, Geludo. I mean, yeah, it's a joke and it's a meme, but it shouldn't be a fact. You know? But other than that, and a few other issues here and there. Yes, you can, Wraith, although I have to vet it, obviously. Other than that, and a few issues here and there. Oh my god! I'm never going to get to talk. I did like the show a lot. The show was really big on continuity in virtually every way. Lots of character arcs, lots of... Right. Hang on just a second. Lots of great character arcs, lots of great subplot arcs, which continued throughout the period. Lots of visual continuity. Things that happened to people or scarred people would have an effect later on. You know, character death was for real. Situations that changed the terrain were real. All sorts of stuff like that. Have I gotten to Tom Baker yet? I'm done, Micromono. I finished the show. Well, it's funny you say that, Huthor, because in Season 1 we find out that the Stormtrooper training regime is about 3 weeks. So... Anyways. So, thank you very, very much, Mega DA. As ever, and as always, much appreciated. Thank you so much. I have jotted that down towards Marvel Alliance 1, IDC. I'm still waiting for Wraith and Seend to get back to me on theirs. Aren't they mass-produced clones? No. No, they're mass-produced drivel, basically. Because, yikes. There's also a scene later on in the show where Rex complains about how hard it is to aim in the Stormtrooper helmet, and in fact, his aim is terrible until he takes off the helmet. Spoilers, Rex is in the show. And so, Yeah. Days Gone. What the heck is Days Gone? Oh, wait, that's the biking game, isn't it? Isn't it? Yes, it is. Yeah, sure. I don't need to vet that. PAX has already told me all about it. So, sure. So, sorry, I already know the ending. But I will definitely add that. Now, Sonic, I'm not going to add anything from Sonic. He's just insane. Anyways, thank you very much, Sonic Doctor. As ever and as always, much appreciated. Now, Sonic and Scemed, I still need to know what you want to put your guys' stop subbing. What you want to put your subs towards. And thank you very much, Durg the Durgan. Much appreciated, thank you. Yeah, I guess it is the end of the month. That's fair. This is probably going to happen a bit, especially given what we're streaming later today. So Sonic Doctor. Is it Eldin or Eldin? I thought it was Eldin. I mean, it doesn't matter. I know what the game is regardless. Eldin. Eldin. I don't have that written down in my notes. I'll have to change that later. Still haven't heard from Scemed. I think Scemed abandoned me. I don't blame him. Oh, that says show news. That's supposed to say random news. Oh my god. I'm so behind today. Anyways, I guess it is show news to talk about the mini nations. Those are going live Tuesday. What else? Bannerlord. How many of you guys care about Mountain Blade Bannerlord? I'll go ahead and raise my hand because I cared about that 3 years ago when it was first actually announced. 2 years ago, 3. It's been a while. It's been a long damn time. They're entering closed beta as of last week. Finally. Why, Alex? Why would you do this to me? Yeah, it was announced forever ago. I became aware of it. I'm pretty sure it was 3 years ago. I'm almost positive. Thank you, Alex, so much. Much appreciated as always. Thank you. Alex, Koro, and Nikki. There. And FF9 and FF6. Whoops! There we go. So noted. Thank you again. So anyways, maybe the game will actually come out sometime in the next decade. At this point, I'm not even sure if I actually care anymore. Like, it stopped being... It's still on my wish list on Steam, but only because I don't usually get rid of games on my Steam wish list. So it's just kind of been sitting there for forever. I could probably actually look up exactly when I added that to the wish list, just to show how long I've been waiting for this damn game. Here we go. See if I can pull it up. Yep, nope, I can pull it up. Whee. The Steam Summer Sale is on. That's a mess. Yep, 2016 is when I added Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord to my wish list. It has been 3 years for me. I was right. Anywho. So, I'm not going to turn this into a full topic, so this is still random news. But how many of you have heard about the thing going on with Pokemon Sword and Shield right now? I'm sure at least some of you have. Because... It's not going to show me it, is it? It's the not all Pokemon thing. I really am getting flooded today. My goodness, thank you very, very much, Sakage. And thank you very, very much, Darth Tyron. Both of you. Much appreciated. Thank you. Now, Sakage told me what he wants to put that towards, but Darth Tyron didn't. T-O-T. T-O-T. I'm glad it helps, Starscream. In what insignificant way that it can, I'm glad to help. Terror time. God, I'm just sitting here like, ugh. Blurg. The brains. So anyways, the reason I brought this up is I wanted to go ahead and quote the exact quote from them about that, which is, and I quote, "Thank you to all our fans for caring so deeply about Pokemon. Recently I shared the news that Pokemon cannot be transferred to Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield. I've read your comments and appreciate your love and passion for Pokemon. Just like all of you, we are passionate about Pokemon, and each and every one of them is important to us. After so many years of developing the Pokemon video games, this is a very difficult decision for me. I like to make one thing clear. Even if a specific Pokemon is not available in Sword and Shield, that does not mean they will not appear in future games. The world of Pokemon continues to evolve. The Galar region offers new Pokemon to encounter, trainers to battle, blah, 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 blah." So, kind of a non-answer. Yeah, a very bleh, basically nothing actually substantial being said by it. And I only wanted to point that out because this has been the official response to the "we're not releasing the old Pokemon in the new Pokemon game" is blah. You could just replace everything I just said with the word blah and none of the content would change. So we haven't really had an actual response yet, and I'm very curious if we will. Now, to be clear, I don't like it. I don't like the fact that I can't have, for example, Crobat in the new Pokemon. I don't even feel the need to explain that. That's such a duh thing. I mean, it's not necessarily a game breaker for me, but it is still something that is a bad. If we do get to the premiere run of this, and this is still a true fact, then guess what? That's getting a negative. We'll see. We'll see where they're going with it. Like I said, I don't actually have much to say about it. I just wanted to touch on that briefly, because a lot of people have been talking about it over the last week. What else? Is that it? I think that's it for random news. Hang on, let me check my phone here just to make sure I've got everything. Oh, nope, I did miss one thing. God, I've been so far behind. Did you guys know that FF14 is getting a live-action TV show? I don't even know what to say about that one. I really don't. I really don't know what to say about that. No, I did not, Max Time. So, sure. We'll see. Alright, and so there is one last thing I did want to mention. I didn't manage to stay up the whole time. Of course I didn't. I worked today. But there is a... So we just finished SGDQ 2019. I managed to see a few of the runs, bits of a few of the runs. Like I said, I was working on Rebels all week and getting other work done. I look forward to watching the VODs of that very slowly over the course of the next several months. I'm starting to understand how you guys feel about this. But in all in total sincerity, it seemed to be a pretty good GDQ. Like, for the most part, every run that I saw, or every run that I heard people talk about, was awesome. And I did manage to see a couple of runs. I got to see the end of the Majora's Mask run. We all know the Postman is the real villain. I got to see a decent chunk of the Mega Man block. I got to see a decent chunk of the beginning of Chrono Trigger, stuff like that. And they managed to pass the 3 million mark. Oh, yeah, I got to see part of the Punch-Out run, too. They managed to pass the 3 million mark for donations, which is amazing. I don't actually know off the top of my head if that is a no-really victory, like if that's a new record for GDQ in general. But passing 3 million is no small feat. I gotta be honest, I didn't think they'd pass 2 million this year. So that's astonishing. And awesome. So I just felt like sharing how incredible that was. I did manage to watch a little bit of the VOD this morning, like minutes of it, where right at the end, because they literally ticked over the 3 million mark during the ending of Chrono Trigger. That's when they actually tripped over the 3 million mark. Now, there are other things that they don't take into account on the live tracker, which tallied up several 100,000 additional dollars. But yikes. So that's awesome, and that's all I wanted to share. So, enough about positivity and good things. Yes, Clavium. I don't know when. It's kind of a low priority stream right now, to be completely honest, which is why it hasn't been scheduled yet. But it is going to be a thing. So I want to talk about EA. Actually, that's not true. I don't want to talk about EA. It'll be a wonderful day when I never have anything to bring up about EA again. Actually, I want to talk very briefly. Did you know that 2K Games is evil and stupid? Pax and I were actually talking about this over the week. 2K Games is actually arguably worse than EA. They just get a lot less press about it. You ever notice that? Anyways, so in addition to EA being stupid, I just want to read my note. Can I just read my note? 1-to-1 here. Andrew Wilson is still a Bond villain, is literally what it says in my notes. He really is. And I saw a thing by Beat Nuki, who actually is Andrew Wilson. Spoiler alert, guys. Sorry. Sorry for giving away your incredibly secret identity as the CEO of EA, Beat Nuki. Why'd you do it, Beat Nuki? You were the chosen one. Thank you very much, Beat Nuki, as always. But do you know what you want to put that towards, as far as a future stream or whatever? Okay, so he basically had this whole speech. It's actually fairly long, and I'm not going to read the whole damn thing to you. But he mentioned 3 points over and over, and I wanted to address all 3 points because all of them are stupid or evil or both, depending on how you think of it. So the point 1 is he wanted to make sure that the loot box... There we go. So noted, Beat Nuki. Thank you very much. The loot boxes always followed 4 core tenets, and I wrote them down. Value.
Of course you follow me. They all do.
Hang on. To be continued. Oh my god, where's my notes? Where's my thing? There we go. No, he called them loot boxes. He literally called them loot boxes. Which is funny, if you think about it. When your CEO releases a thing calling them loot boxes, I'm pretty sure, I almost guarantee, and I mean this sincerely, that was something that was added or changed after the debacle of the United Kingdom Parliament hearing thing I mentioned last week. I'm serious. Because I wouldn't be surprised if there was going to be a massive change for them calling them surprise mechanics. And then that happened, and they went right back to calling them loot boxes to cover their asses. And I know what you're thinking. Well, hang on, how does that cover their asses? Well, it's within the relative possibility that they will actually be able to argue that she was not speaking for the company in that moment. So any lies she may have told might not actually affect the corporation on a legal level. Now, granted, she was there as a representative of EA, so that's not a guaranteed. But if they consistently show effort that the rest of the company doesn't adhere to what she was saying, then they can then argue, oh, no, it was her. She's the only one thinking that. So that's what I'm thinking is happening. Thank you very, very much, Phoenix Alderi. As always, much appreciate. Thank you so much. And I've written that down towards Link's Awakening. I'm very much looking forward to that myself. Love that quote, too, by the way. Where's my notes? Here's my notes. Okay, loot boxes. 4 points. Value, fairness, choice, and fun. All right. I hate loot boxes. I've made this very clear over time. I've said that I cannot picture a circumstance in which loot boxes, as we defined loot boxes, are actually a positive aspect. At best, at absolute best, I have argued they can only ever be neutral. So I'm very anti-biased. So I want to ask you guys, can you ever see any value, fairness, choice, and fun in loot boxes, as defined? As we've said many, many times, those, like a Magic the Gathering card, that's not loot boxes. I'm trying to think of another example here of something that isn't actually a loot box. There are examples. I can't think of any right now. I like Max Time's comment. I don't know a single random thing I like. Let's go ahead and assume that this dice roll will determine how much money I make for the rest of my life. Yeah. I got a 3. I'm with you on that one, Max Time. As fun as the lottery. I'm sorry. Oh, when was this? Was many years ago. There was a gentleman in front of me at the gas station. And I needed to go and buy something. So he's like, oh, go ahead. And he was very nice. He was very polite. So he let me go in front of him. I'm like, okay, you sure? He's like, yeah, no, I'm going to be a while. I'm like, okay. So I walked up and paid for my stuff and started to leave. And he walks up. And I ended up talking with a friend of mine who I was there with, so we ended up staying for a bit, and we ended up both... What he was doing was he would buy a lottery ticket, not a full lottery ticket, a scratcher. He would buy a scratcher, scratch it off, and say, ah, and then he'd buy a scratcher, then he'd scratch it off, and then he'd buy a scratcher, and then he'd scratch it off. And he was just standing there doing this. Every now and again... Like, I think we saw this once. He would win. He'd say, hey, here's $10. He'd turn it right back into the guy, get his $10, buy a scratcher. And when I saw that, and I mentioned this to my friend at the time, too, I was reminded of Vegas, actually. Now, I haven't seen this in a long time. I've been to Vegas several times because I have family living there. But when I was much younger, one of the things I would see very often in Vegas is basically... How many of you have ever seen this in person? Kung, flunk. Chikung, flunk, chikung, flunk, chikung, flunk. And just this. Not paying... No variance in the rhythm or tempo. Doesn't matter if you win or lose, just put in chunk, 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 over and over and over again. I've seen it multiple times in my life. Anyways, I'm sorry. We'll talk more about gambling in a second. I do actually have something to share about gambling. I'm curious what Valerian thinks about this too. You never told me your answer to the Democrat-Republican question, by the way, Valerian. Don't want it here. Over in Discord. One of the defenses, to continue back to the topic, one of the defenses that Mr. Andrew Wilson had of the fact that loot boxes are totally fair and awesome is the fact that they revealed the odds to winning stuff from the loot boxes. Now, this is funny for 3 reasons for me. Reason number 1, because they only... he phrased it in a very specific way to make it seem like... Imagine if I said this to you. In order to ensure proper fairness and transparency for all our players, we're going to go ahead and give you all of the information necessary to know what the odds are at any given point in time. Thing is, that's not what happened. EA was basically forced under legal pressure to release those odds from multiple sources across a decent period of time, and they still resisted that several times. So that's point 1. Point 2 is the fact that they don't actually release the 100% odds. Now, we don't know if they're literally lying or not, but when I say they don't release the 100% odds, what I mean by that is they will list odds that say things like roughly 3% chance, or around 1% chance, or under 1% chance, which doesn't actually give you the odds. if you know what I mean. 1 in 3,000 is the odds. Less than 1% is not. Hi, Venters. The third thing I find funny about this is the very idea that revealing the odds is a good thing. Now, I know that sounds strange, but I want to talk about that very briefly. And now I'm going to be talking about this as an amateur because I didn't have the time to research this like I wanted to, so please forgive me. By the way, thank you very much, Venters. Do you know what you want to put that towards? Oh, I'm all caught up, Death God Scythe, but I have had no time to play at all. I don't know when I will. A few more weeks, maybe? I don't know. In actual predatory gambling, aka Vegas, odds are almost always presented. It's almost always a known variable. And the reason for that is specifically as a method to manipulate you, in order to cause you to think you have, you're just that close, or it's so possible that you can make this. Or, if only I did like 3 or so more runs of this, I would clearly win such and such. Yeah, it's bait. Exactly, it is bait. Now, I found a study on this. It's by Mark R. Dixon at the Southern Illinois University, and I mentioned that out loud to show my sources, and you can read this if you want to. And as with all studies, whether this is valid or not is completely up to you, and that's why I'm telling you the study, so you can look it up if you really care enough. But the idea here is his whole point. It's a very long study. I'm not going to read all 16 pages of this for you. The idea of his study is the concept of illusory choice, or illusionary. Sorry, he calls it illusionary. The illusionary option. It's the idea of the probability of winning on any one trial of the game is identical to the probability of winning on any previous or subsequent trial, and thus behavior under control of such a schedule of reinforcement is hard to distinguish because of the opportunity to earn reinforcement following any given trial. And then I'm going to skip past some of this, because he starts showing a lot of lists of other people who have done other studies based on gambling. Excuse me. But there's one bit here, which I really want to read for you. Here we go. So, the industry of casinos is aware of people's preference for situations whereby illusionary behavior may be emitted, as many casino games allow the player to do so. For example, if you were playing roulette, you are allowed to both select the odds in which you will place a bet and the numbers within those odds that they believe will give you a better chance of hitting the next time the wheel is spun. In this case, the actual numerical locations of chips within a given set of odds at roulette has no influence on the probability of winning. I want to pause for a moment there, because that is a very important point that a lot of people don't understand. Statistics are probability, not certainty. I know that's a hard to understand concept, because everyone mentally thinks, the human brain is actually wired to think that if you see 1 in 3, that in 3 shots you'll get it. But that's not actually how that works, unless there's a bad luck protection mechanic built into it. 1 in 3 means 1 in 3. Every time you do it, it's a new roll. So, now I have to kill Gold Flavius. Alright guys, let's stab Gold Flavius. No, I'm kidding. Thank you very much, Gold Flavius. Although you haven't told me what you want to put it towards. So when given a choice between control over chip placement and random chip placement, while the odds are still constant, subjects have been shown to prefer to select their own numbers. Even when a response cost of one's chip is imposed for the opportunity, subjects still repeatedly select the illusionary option. I'll explain what I mean by that real quick, because that's referring to the Dixon, Hayes, and Ebb study of 1998. What that means is they did a study where you could just roll the dice straight, and that would cost you 1. Or you could say, well, I want to put it on that number, and that would cost you 2. People would be more likely to select the number and pay the additional for the illusion of choice, even though, demonstrably mathematically, there was no change in the odds. Fire Emblem, you got it. Obvious. Isn't that already on the list? It might not be. Fire Emblem. So noted, and thank you, sir. Now, like I said, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I only bring this up to help add weight to my point, that simply giving out the odds is not actually a good thing when it comes to gambling. It's not. It is a manipulative thing when it comes to gambling. It is a method by which to encourage people to spend more money. This is a demonstrable fact. So someone in chat, I didn't catch who it was, please forgive me, mentioned how it's a good thing to reveal the odds. And while that could be argued back and forth, I'm not sure I agree. Because thanks to the way human psychology works, revealing the odds almost universally leads to a situation where more people are inclined to spend more money. Because that's just how that works. Because of everything I just mentioned, because of the illusion of choice, because of a misunderstanding of statistics. And I bring this up because, as I've said many, many times, even though I feel that loot boxes will only ever at best be neutral, I think that predatory loot boxes are negative, just straight negative. And I'm not sure I could be argued down out of that point. Yeah. Yeah, actually, Hazardous has a good point. It is also similar to the concept of charging something for $9.99. And now that has its own bit of psychological manipulation built in. Just saying it's $8.99 or $7.99 or whatever. But there's actually an additional bit of irritation there, which thankfully companies have stopped doing around here, where they'd say it's under $10 when it's $9.99. What are predatory loot boxes? Oh, Jesus, how do I explain that? Okay. God, where do I even begin? Before they changed it, Battlefront 2 EA. What are you hearing, Bio? Unless you're just hearing my computer, which is entirely possible. Yeah, let me mute myself and see if you still hear it. Anyways, yeah, I agree. The easier thing would be to define non-predatory loot boxes, which I'm sure exists somewhere. I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but I'm sure they exist somewhere. No, I think that too, Nerdman, but I also don't like Darth Bane. A box with a predator that comes up to kill you. Ah! STO? STO is probably the closest to non-predatory loot boxes I could think of off the top of my head. They're still not good. I don't think they're good. But they don't do a lot of the usual tricks. They don't overemphasize the loot boxes. They don't overemphasize the necessary stuff to buy the loot boxes. You know, they don't spam your face with, hey, you should totally buy this, and they don't have this big flashy animation for opening a JPEG. You know, they don't do that. It's just plong, and here's what you get. You know. They skip most of the usual issues there. I still don't like STO's loot boxes, don't mistake me, but they do bypass a lot of the bull crap. Like, how many times have you played a game, I can name several myself, where you log in, and the first thing you see, very first thing, is, here's today's sales. And there were a few mobile games back when I was doing my purview of many, many mobile games to try and, look into that market, where there were many mobile games where there'd always be one which was like, here's the $100 pack. Massive bonus. Like the real estate of the screen, almost a full half of it was over here devoted towards the $100 pack. Like, look at how amazing this is. Look at how incredible this is. Oh, that's true, Retu. I forgot about that, because you can turn that off. That was one of the first things I did. No joke. One of the first things I ever did when I started playing STO during the Romulan expansion, so when I really started getting into it, was turn that option off because it was stupid and dumb. Am I giving STO a bit of a pass? No. I still think loot boxes in STO are awful. A game in which you technically can open boxes without spending real more money is not awesome. It's not good. It's just a thing. That's another bit of psychological manipulation, actually, while we're on the subject. How many times have you heard the defense of loot boxes by saying, oh, well, you don't have to spend real money for them? How many times have you used that defense? And I'm not trying to accuse anyone here. I'm just pointing out how utterly bizarre of a world we live in here, in which people, individuals, will defend a corporation because, well, they're not as bad as they could be. Now, of course, this is, as always, a case-by-case basis. I'm going to use a game, I'm not going to name the game, but I'm going to use a game off the top of my head where you could earn about, I think it was roughly 1/3 of a loot box every day if you did, like, the dailies, for example. So that's true. Within that system, you could get one additional loot box every 3 days, roughly. Cool, okay. But in my opinion, that's just, huh? How is that a good thing? Especially since those dailies they're not just quick and easy to do. We're talking sitting down and playing for like an hour and a half just to do the dailies, just to open a loot box in every 3 days, roughly. Yes, I have, Bio. Although I need to do another one, a more recent one. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to talk about this anymore. This is a whole mess of a topic, and it's, in my opinion, and I'm just going to be real for a second here. In my opinion, we've gotten to the point where it's so bad that we're looking for things that are less bad to be happy with. You know what I'm talking about. We as human beings are astonishingly adaptable creatures. It's one of the most insane things, if you really sit back and think about it, when it comes to being a human being. And we do this mentally, too. We do this emotionally. We get adapted to things. If you live, I'm going to use a personal example here. If you are in a terrible situation where you are in pain all the time, those moments where you're not in pain are just like, ah, this is so wonderful. I feel like that's where we're at right now, and have been for a few years when it comes to the gaming industry, that things are so bad that the moments of pain relief are the things we're championing. I don't know if that's deliberate. I'm not a big fan of conspiracy theories, but that's just life. Anyways, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go off on a big thing of this. I really didn't. Where's my notes? Where's my notes? Yeah, I'm in pain right now too, funnily enough. I did want to mention, so there's actually another thing, sorry, there's actually another point I wanted to talk about for the EA thing. And that is the access over ownership. He kept hammering that point in over and over and over again. I like to think of this as the Netflix problem. Now, I've heard some people, forgive me for kind of speechifying about this, because I've heard a lot of people say some weird things that I'm not sure. I just want to lay this out there, nice and bluntly, okay? So, I own the Lord of the Rings Sixology. They're actually right over there, in that closet. I can go pick them up and slide them in and watch those movies right now. I own those. Mine. If, back when I had Netflix, I didn't own anything that was on Netflix, all of this is still duh, right? You're probably looking at me like, Laura, what's up with this? Well, here's the catch. The way that licensing works when it comes to rentals, especially in the modern era, is a place that offers those said rentals. Yes, Bio. Actually, it's in a space station. There's a big window behind me. Read the books, but the books suck. I'm sorry. I don't actually mean that. I'm just poking fun. I'm just poking fun. The words. The movies on Netflix I didn't own. I was functionally accessing them, to use the current terminology. I accessed them rather than owned them. Now, some of you may be aware that every year for, I think, 3 years now, when it comes to my ruminations, a lot of you guys request that I look at movies. And I usually bundle all those movies into one chunk. And if you look at the website, you'll notice that starting in, I want to say, October, It's going to be like nothing but movie ruminations for the rest of the year. That's going to be the movie bundle. Now, when I was sitting down to watch several of those movies, I actually still owned a Netflix ownership, or subscription. Still had a Netflix subscription, sorry. So I went to be like, all right, let's look up some of these movies, because several of them should have still been on Netflix. Well, they weren't. This is the catch when it comes to this kind of service. And I use Netflix very specifically because it's one of the things that people are more accepting of because it has obvious benefits. There is a legitimate benefit to having Netflix, assuming it has stuff you want. There's a lot of shows there, and there's a lot of movies there, and you just be done. It's basically like back in the day, back when rental stores were a common thing, having the monthly subscription to the rental store. You probably, I don't know how many of you guys ever did that. I did that briefly. Me and my mom did that briefly for a rental store. This is all the way back in California, the late 90s. There was a place where we could go, and we just had a subscription there. And that meant we could just basically, turn in a movie and take out a movie. We could have one movie out at a time, infinitely, as long as we paid the subscription. It was basically the old Netflix deal. And that was a great deal. So there's obvious benefits to that. But the detriment is that the people who cycle those things out, and again, I especially point to Netflix, they don't always have those things. They don't always actually have the movies that you want to have later. This is actually starting to become a thing with companies like Steam. Because there are games that are slowly... We've finally begun where this is going to be happening. I've unfortunately predicted this for years. We've reached the point where games are slowly starting to be delisted from digital stores because licensing rights are running out. It's the exact same problem Netflix has, again, now. And this brings me back to access over ownership. And the single biggest problem with access over ownership is because access over ownership means, basically it means if you don't care, and I don't mean that as an insult, but if you don't care, then you can just have whatever. But if you do care, then you can't just have whatever. You are at the whims of licensing, you're at the whims of what is available at the time, and you are at the whims of whether or not that service continues to be available going forward. Yeah, I wasn't even going to get into that, Gold Floppies, because I've talked about that several times, about the problems with, if there was just one Netflix, it would still be a little bit more reasonable, but it's not. There's like 15 Netflixes right now. And that's part of the problem, too. So, limited library, in addition to issues with regards to whether or not you own the thing or not. My point in all of this...
Pay close attention. Hopefully you'll learn something.
My point in all of this is that Vigilant is awesome. No, it's true. Vigilant is actually really awesome. As much as he hates me for my review of, of my dice, of Enderal. Yeah, I'm with you on that, Vigilant. And thank you very much, as always. And I will jot that down towards the Vigilant Fund. I'm running out of room here. Need to move this down. There we go. Thank you again. My point in all of this is he was pushing the idea of access over ownership. And his reasoning was very simple. It's everything I told you about the benefits of Netflix. People want the ability to just tie in a subscription to have access to a bunch of games. Uplay is doing that. Microsoft is doing that. Square has been thinking about doing that. I know Steam has a thing like that. I know there's others. I can't think of them all. Please forgive me. But there are several Netflix for games things already. I have not, Erdman, no. Origin, thank you. Origin has that right now. I knew there was at least another one that's active now. They already have this crap. And I'm just going to call it crap because I think it's crap. There's some benefits there. There are. But the fact that the companies are diving on board this full tilt is not a good thing, in my opinion. I've actually mentioned several times that I kind of prefer physical media, and one of the simplest and dumbest reasons why I prefer physical media is because I own these games. Every Switch game I have in this case is mine. And there's not a lot that anyone can do about that other than literally robbing me. Please don't rob me. You know what I mean? And of course, I've already talked about the economic reason. Well, there's actually two economic reasons why companies are pushing this. Reason number one is because it's a trend. Every company likes to jump on trends. It's so duh of a thing. Because all it takes is one guy or girl, gender doesn't matter, one person in a meeting who's read a magazine. And that's all it takes for a company to jump on a trend. If you can't fill in the blanks there, I don't want to... I've already talked too much on this topic, but you get the point, I'm sure. One person can push a whole company into jumping on a trend. Hey, look at what this other person is doing. Look what this other company's doing. Google Stadia can go to hell. Sorry. And the other reason that they like to do this is because, economically speaking, companies would rather have a significant amount of recurring income rather than having sales points. Now, there's actually a lot of reasons why that's really dumb. And I don't want to get into that because that's a whole economic discussion. But basically, they want money trickling in at a regular basis rather than occasional spikes of static sales. I've talked about this concept before. Speaking of Google Stadia, I need to read something for you because I actually pulled this up here. You ready for this? This is great. Phil Harrison, VP and General Manager of Google, indicated he doesn't believe data caps represent a major challenge to Stadia, the company's upcoming video game streaming service. Go away ad. In an interview, he was asked how much of a limiting factor he sees data caps are. And I quote, "Data caps are not a universal challenge. The ISPs have a strong history of staying ahead of consumer trends. And if you look at a history of data caps in those small number of markets, and it's actually a relatively small number of markets that have data caps, the trend over time, when music streaming and download became popular, especially in the early days, this is a hell of a run-on sentence, especially in the early days when it was not necessarily legitimate, data caps moved up. And then with the evolution of TV and film streaming, data caps moved up, and we expect that will be that will continue to be the case." This is also a direct quote. "ISPs are smart, and they understand they're in the business of keeping customers happy and keeping customers with them for a long time." I'm losing my voice because this is so stupid. Oh my God. And then he continues... I'm not going to read the rest of it. He just continues to blither on. "I've got 35 megabits per second, and that's all I need. But you won't even need that because we're going to use compression. So it's not correct to multiply 35 megabits per second versus the number of seconds you'll play. That's not the actual value." Yeah, sure. Here you go. Here's a link to the whole thing. Just... I agree with Takoida. I feel this is the second time I've mentioned this in a Loreweek. I feel this is just someone reading a party line. I doubt he believes a word he's saying, or not one word. Like there's this bit, Verizon fixed wireless cost for minimum 300 megabits per second and up to a gigabit is $50 a month. It's a pretty good value to me, huh? So your 300 megabits connection, which isn't what you actually get, which is limited to a gigabit per month, which is a data cap, for $50 a month is a good value to you. Let's see here. No, I'm not going to prove him wrong. I don't need to. Every now and again, I don't need to prove someone wrong. They did it themselves. Moving on. Okay, so I want to talk about something else here. Actually, I don't want to talk about this. But you know how this works. Alright, how many of you guys are awesome? All of you? Wow, that's pretty cool. Well, congratulations, you are not an investment people. So that's actually not fair. So some of you may know I have a terminology I call the money people. Now, that is my own term. And I use that term very specifically because it is actually a massive umbrella term. It refers to a lot of different groups of people in a lot of different positions. It refers to COOs, it refers to ownership, sometimes it's presidents, sometimes it's the CEO. It varies, is the whole point. That's why I use such a generic term. The money people are the ones who are concerned about the financial side of a business and basically are the ones who make decisions when it comes to companies, right? Now, investment people is a similar term. What cyberpunk thing? Investment people is a similar term. It doesn't actually refer to a specific individual or group or whatever. Investment people are the people who are pushing for the investment cycle that I've talked about several times when it comes to financial matters. At least here in the States. I'm not actually sure how this works in other countries. There's only so many hours in a day. Give me a break. But investment people are the ones who are speculators, people who are specific firms, investment firms, groups that are trying to push for as much money out, for as much money in as possible. No, I'm not going to talk about that, hazardous. All that kind of stuff. One of the biggest problems with investment people is that they're not the money people, but they can be, especially when it comes to three specific things that matter a lot to us: movies, shows, and video games. All three of these things are in many ways pushed and defined by investment people. Because if you sat down and said, pitch me a game real quick, for real, you can make it up if you want. It doesn't have to be something super awesome. Just pitch me a game. A Pokemon MMO. The Awesome Adventures of the Lorewalkers. That's too amazing. Ultimecia and Friends Time Travel. You can become a knight. Super Monkey Ball sequel. I'm with it. Front Mission 6. Andrew Wilson's Morality Misadventures. I like that one. Let's go to Wild West Far Cry. It's one of the first ones that was mentioned there. So, there's a Wild West Far Cry game we're going to be pitching. All right, well, congratulations. Done. I'm going to go ahead and push for it to be a thing. Now, do you know why? Because it has Far Cry in the name. The investment people's goal, and I mean this because this is either their singular goal or their highest priority goal, and it doesn't really matter which, is to make as much money as possible in as small of a time as possible. That is the goal of the investment people, okay? That is a universal truth. If you are in this category of investment people, that's you. That's your goal. That's your intention. So investment people tend to favor one of two things. Either something that is a guaranteed success, or something that is a very high probability of success. I love it, Nerman. Sold! No, Now, my point of bringing that up is because this is, in my opinion, one of the biggest problems with AAA development in general right now. And again, this applies to movies and shows as well. The safe thing is more likely to make more money. Therefore, there is more likely to be more investment for the safe thing. Now, this is the one key distinction between money people and investment people. Because investment people are the ones who are actually having the money that goes into the project. The money people are the people who decide where the money goes after it's already been put into the project. Does that make sense? So the investment people are the ones who can functionally decide whether a project exists at all, whether it will ever become a thing. And thus, they tend to go for the safe thing. And so, if you see a game that is likely to succeed because it has Far Cry in the name, then it is far more likely to actually be a thing. Because it has Far Cry in the name. Because they can look at the sales figures and say, aha! And I feel this is one of the biggest reasons why we're seeing so many pushes into loot boxes, because they are not because, I know this is going to sound so strange, but not necessarily because they're stupid, and not necessarily because they're evil, but just because they're going with the safe market. Loot boxes do make money. They make a stupid amount of money. So it is the safe investment to go ahead and push for a game, or whatever, if it's going to have that kind of loot box economy built into it. If it's going to be a part of the game. But therefore, oh, well, I mean, I was a little bit hesitant about whether or not I was going to fund your survival game featuring a samurai and a Roman soldier who are both in World War One, but you mention all these loot boxes that are going to be in it, and therefore I'm far more likely to actually to put money forward for this to happen. This then leads to the great dilemma, doesn't it? Obviously, this has been a problem for many years, where the safe thing can lead to something that is less interesting or less fun or less good. It's easy in hindsight to look at, I'll use a direct example. It's easy in hindsight to look at Stardew Valley and to say, oh, well, that's a game that's going to be wildly successful. But some of you probably don't remember, Stardew Valley was actually in development for quite some time, and effectively an open beta long before the game actually came out, and very few people had ever heard of it or were paying any attention to it. It was perceived as a tremendous niche game that nobody was going to care about. It was just a private personal project by, I can't remember his name, who wanted to make this game because he liked Harvest Moon, and that was all it was. Now, in the wake of that, people can look at that and be like, oh man, a Stardew Valley type game? That's something that might sell, because it already did. But you could, and Minecraft is another fantastic example of this, honestly. I remember when Minecraft wasn't even done yet. Before it was even actually released in a proper format. Before it had things like actual health values, or being able to craft something other than like the basic building blocks. Before it had zombies or nighttime mechanics at all. You know, because I played Minecraft back then. My point being, this is one of the inherent problems of the investment people, is because the investment people functionally tend to decide what gets made, at least on a large scale. We'll always have the indie development scene. That's basically the realm of passion projects or independent funding. But the big stuff, AA and AAA both, that's only going to happen if investors see that there's enough potential value in it to get a return on investment, right? And of course, as I've said many, many times, this leads to a bit of a creative problem. If you're only ever making things that you know are going to sell, then what's being made that's new? Because by definition, something that you know is going to sell is not something new. It is not something creative necessarily. It is not something good necessarily. It's something proven. Now, we can still get good, proven games out of this format. Absolutely. I mean, we had God of War 4, Spider-Man PS4, both of those are AAA games that were excellent. But if we're being completely honest, neither of them were particularly innovative. They were just very good. Listen to me, just very good. The point I'm trying to reach is that this is an issue. And I can't remember what prompted it. Someone was bringing up something about AAA development nowadays. And it got me thinking about this entire topic and about why this cycle exists. Why this problem exists. Because anybody who is a movie geek, any film geeks out there? I'll go ahead and raise my hand because I'm a bit of a film geek. Just a little bit of one. Any film geeks out there can probably look at the way films have been going for the last 30 years. And you already see this problem that's well past the initial points of the problem, you know? That films have already been having this problem for a long time. I agree, Valerian. I've said so many times that the quarterly return problem is the root of a huge amount of issues with literal human society. TV has been going through an interesting renaissance. And I actually have my theories as to why that is. Someone was asking me, this is a few months ago, why it is that I only really watch a few movies a year, and they're all basically geek movies. And my answer is basically that none of the other films that are coming out really look interesting to me, unless they're something that is nice and innovative and cool that is something I don't want anything to do with, basically. Like Get Out, for example. I'll use that as an example of a film, because Get Out was one of those interesting... I think it's Get Out. Let me double check that. Let me make sure I'm saying the right film here. Yep, that's the one. Get Out. I was right. Get Out was a film that was good. It was a horror film, and it was a psychological thriller, and therefore I didn't have any interest in it. But it was a film that kind of follows the Stardew Valley thing that we were just talking about. Nobody really predicted Get Out would be that much of a success until it came out and just was good film, and a lot of people wanted to see it. And we've already seen several films trying to follow in the coattails of Get Out and trying to do a similar take on things. Thank you very, very much, yeah. As ever, and as always, much appreciate your support. Thank you. Now, if you want to put that towards if you want to put that towards funding a future stream, just let me know, and I'll go ahead and jot that down. Either way, thank you very much. No, Huthar, that is absolutely how it's always been. Star Wars really was an exception. I've talked about that many times. It was just, oh my god. Very few people, I think 3 people, really predicted Star Wars was going to be a success. One guy at Fox, I can't remember his name, Steven Spielberg, who back in those days really had his finger on the pulse of cinematography in general. So he could predict that kind of thing. He did the same thing with Back to the Future, by the way. And Alec Guinness were the only 3 people who predicted Star Wars were going to be a success. There's probably more, but you know. So you're right, this is not a new problem. But it's a problem that I don't really see a lot of a solution for. Unless we start to think of things from a different perspective. Like if you start to look at things from the perspective of how do you convince someone to avoid market flooding and instead go for risky investment. You got it, yeah. Let me jot that down really quick. Yeah, 455, Elden Ring. Unless I conquer the world. Well, see, the problem is, in my opinion, this is an easy case to make. If we were to... Hang on. I can't do it. I can't do it. There we go. If we could just get rid of most of the major investment firms in the world. I know that sounds horrible, but I do firmly believe that the mere existence of most of the major investment firms is a lot of the problem here. Because what is an investment firm? Let's presume you work at an investment firm. What's your job? Yeah, money. Make more money. That's it. That is your only job. What you produce into the world, what you take out of the world, is nothing other than trying to cycle an ever-increasing share. That's it, and that's all. To be as blunt as I can be, investment firms produce nothing on a grand scale, on a species scale. They add nothing to the substance of the universe. Now, you might say, well, how are we going to do investments at this point? Let me try to sell you, okay? Hear me out, because I spent some time thinking about this morning. I want you to imagine that you have a choice. Whatever your savings is right now, don't tell me. I don't want to know your personal info. But let's assume you have X amount of money in your savings right now. And that's there for whatever, right? Just in case. Now, let's say I come to you and I'm like, hey, so I want to sell you on investing in something. Doesn't matter what I'm selling you and investing in. It really doesn't. But after trying to go ahead and convince you of this, here's my selling point. You could have all that money there, which is a decent chunk of money, or you could get an extra $200 a month or equivalent. Now, right now, most investment firms and most large-scale companies, investors, money people, etc., will look at that and be like, "That's stupid. You want me to put away all that money just for $200 a month? That's a joke." The thing is, the reason, this is my opinion, the reason, hang on, we need a stab to Koya. There we go. And we'll rob him. The reason that people tend to think this, in my opinion, is because of greed, or because of a lack of understanding of scale. Most people who invest do so from one of two perspectives, either the desire to get rich, or the desire to have a nest egg when they retire, one of the two. The people in the desire to get rich category are idiots who shouldn't even be trying. Because the only way you will ever make enough money to be rich, to get rich off of investments, is either wild luck or to already be rich. So that's not even a thing. If you want to go gamble, go to Vegas. Don't invest. I know that sounds horrible, but honestly, you're not going to get rich off investments unless you get wildly lucky. It is basically lottery odds. So next point. Some people look at that and they say $200 a month. Well, that's a joke. That's nothing. Except $200 a month is actually a pretty decent thing, especially if it is maintained as a guarantee. Let me put it to you this way. I don't know your guys' financial situations, and again, I don't want to. But for me, $200 a month is a pretty decent chunk of change. I could, for example, just write off one or two of my major bills, my utilities, and just not have to think about that every month. Or I could put that towards having a little bit of extra money in case something goes wrong. Or I could put that money towards a little bit of extra recreation, being able to go out to the movies or going to a nice restaurant a few times or whatever. Or I could put that money towards being able to slowly, save it up in order to buy something nice for myself. Like I've been thinking about getting a washer and dryer, for example. So a few months of that extra $200 a month, and I would be able to get to the point of being able to buy a washer and dryer. Or, and you get my point. $200 a month, this is in my opinion the core problem here, and it is pure opinion. But I think the problem is most people don't realize how much money $200 a month really can be. Instead, they look at it and say, well, why would I want $200 a month? I want $1,000 a month. Or I want $15,000 a month. Or I want $20,000 a month. I want you to really sit back and think about what you would do with $20,000 a month. Try to picture that for a second. I know what I would do because I've put thought into this because I'm a financial geek, but you get the point, right? Yeah, exactly, Gum Gum. They only think in terms of big numbers. People look at, that's it? Yeah, $20,000 a month is a gargantuan amount of money. That's a nuts amount of money, especially if it's repeatable. And of course, that's what people want. They want to just have that $20,000 a month. That's what I told you. They want to be rich. Yeah, a small loan of $1 million. I don't actually want to bring up politics into this, but it is probably really worth noting that a small loan of $1 million is indicative of the mindset there. Because at certain circles, $1 million is small. That's like me loaning you 100 for some of these people. And I think that's the problem. Now, someone earlier, I forget who it was, please forgive me, was trying to play devil's advocate by saying that the AAA industry wouldn't exist without this stupid amount of money cycling into this market. Because how else are you going to raise that kind of investment? And that is a valid statement. However, it is my opinion that this is a net negative scenario. There's enough money being poured into enough markets, which is basically being wasted. And in addition to the fact that we're getting some fairly substantial net negative products as a consequence, the majority of AAA games. And on top of that, never mind what this is doing to the actual people making these games. Forgive me for bringing things down to the personal perspective for a minute, but how do you think it feels to be a guy or a girl who's finally, I say guy because I'm a guy, be a person who's finally broken into the gaming development industry and you're working at Company B and you end up burning yourself out over your first game a AAA title by crunch and by working way too much and way too hard. How do you think that feels? It is my opinion that the way that cycle works right now, thanks to the investment people, is a net negative scenario. And that is just my opinion. Yeah, crunch culture. We'll be talking about that later today, too. Let's move on. I'm sorry. I could really spiral on this topic a lot. There's a lot to talk about here. Because this is a large-scale topic. Depends on if we were able to actually tax it hazardous. Tax loopholes are as ever tax loopholes. Alright, so the next topic... Where's my next topic? Some of you may be aware of the fact that I have a Tumblr account. Lord knows more people are being aware of that lately because I've started getting deluged with questions a lot lately. So I'm going to go and be real with you guys for a second. I've been deleting a lot of the questions that have started coming through. Because apparently trolls have decided to get a hold of my Tumblr account and started asking troll questions. Now, after putting up with this for, I think, about a month at this point, it's been about a month, I came very close to just deleting my Tumblr account because I was really tired of waking up and hearing someone say, "Man, Lore, where can I find you to put a giant diarrhea dump on your face?" You know, just questions like that. I don't really feel like waking up and reading that in my morning. My current approach has been to delete or block a lot of these questions based on the specific question. Yes, that's not one I made up, by the way. That's an actual question I got last week. So, yeah. I thought about shutting it down. I'm not sure if I'm going to yet or not. But one thing I do want to mention, I've got something like 18 questions outstanding right now. It's just kind of piling up, even if me trying to answer some of them. The real question, though, that's relevant for you guys, whether I keep the Tumblr account or not, is should I keep doing the Tumblr questions section during Loreweek? Originally, I did it because I felt some of these questions would make for interesting discussions. What do you guys think? Because this is, as ever, your show, too. I know there are at least 2 people who do not actually want me to do that. But that's the only 2 I know of. I gotta wait. Yes, what? Yes, which? I could move them to Discord? That's true, I could. Like, for example, I'll just give you some examples. I've got a question here about the Nintendo Cinematic Universe. There's actually a question from about a month and a half ago. It's a follow-up on that. Basically, what would you do with these various villains in the Nintendo Cinematic Universe? There is, of course, a Mass Effect Elseworlds question, because there's always at least one of those. There's a question about how to rewrite the Emperor from Tor. There's a question about doing a Transformers Mega Man X crossover series. There's a question about making a Venom-based video game. There's a question about the economic byproduct of sudden wealth redistribution. There's a question about... I'm sorry, that is a second Mass Effect Elseworlds question, I just realized. There is a question I don't even understand. There's a question about Mario and Optimus Prime. Mario Optimus. I can't do his voice. I am Mario Optimus Prime. You ever notice that? He likes to say his name a lot. In almost every media, I am Optimus Prime. How often does he say that? He likes to begin speeches with that, too. What do you think we should get for dinner, Optimus? I am Optimus Prime, and I cannot condone pineapple in my pizza. And that's actually what started the original war between the Decepticons and the Autobots. Tumblr isn't directly connected to income, Loner, but it's always been a way for me to continue to have viewer interaction, basically. I've always been really big on viewer interaction. I read all my comments, I read chat when I stream, and I answer Tumblr questions. That's always been a big thing for me. I don't know what people would think if I stopped interacting with viewers. Even in just one way. Like, if I just stopped reading chat... Hang on, I'm going to close chat here for just a second. There we go. Now I can no longer read chat. I suddenly have nothing to talk about. Let me make up a topic. Death. So death... No, that's a terrible topic. I can't think of a topic. I wasn't prepared for this. I wasn't ready. Level design. So one of the things I find most fascinating when it comes to level design is how iterative it tends to be, at least from the way I approach it. Now, I know some people are sufficiently versed and sufficiently competent in the way they do it that they're able to just sit down and make out a level. Or sometimes they just have an idea for a level and it just kind of flows naturally. But I'm not that way. Usually I sit down and I make a level, and it's like, okay, I just start pushing things randomly out in addition to a theme, and this already sucks. I don't want to ignore what's chat saying. What in the world is that GIF, Huthor? There are far too many caps in my chat right now. Ah, go for it, Dakota. I mean, Transformers 3 was, in my opinion, the worst of the series until Transformers 4 came out. Until Transformers 5 came out. But point being...
Zug Zug.
Yeah, I haven't decided what I'm going to do about the Tumblr situation just yet. But I've been thinking about removing it from Loreweek, even though it's just going to make Loreweek shorter. It's not like I don't have enough other things to stream, right? I think that's what I'm going to do going forward at this point. I hate to do that. I'm sure some people were excited about the idea of their questions being read out loud and being discussed on stream, but the harsh reality is that I'm getting so many of these questions, and literally 2 of them are Mass Effect Elseworlds questions, so... I think that's what we're going to do temporarily. We'll see what people think about that. We'll see what people think. What do I think of the Crossroads cinematic? That cinematic was the greatest cinematic ever made in the history... What the heck is the Crossroads cinematic? I actually agree, Colgrim. First there was Transformers 1, then there's Transformers 2, then there's Transformers 3, then there's Transformers 4, then there's Transformers 5. If you don't follow my tonality there, each movie just got worse. And I didn't even like Transformers 1 that much. Now, that being stated, I do think Bumblebee was actually a decent movie. Dinobots was 4. And 5. But 4 was when they were introduced. For about 10 seconds. Okay, that is a bit of an exaggeration, but I think that the Dinobots had, I think, a total of 5 or 6 minutes of screen time to them. Something like that. It was very brief. Oh, that one, Papaneeks. Well, see, I'm not going to answer that question, because I can't answer that without being amazingly cynical. Huthor already knows my opinions on that, because he and I have actually talked about it. Anyways, so I'm going to go ahead and chop this off. So for those of you watching on YouTube...